Hey, welcome to Discovering Exodus. I am Kristen Tschida, and we are on day 30, chapter 30. It's very exciting. There's only 40 chapters in Exodus, so we are on our way. And today we're going to focus on the golden altar of incense, and then connected to the incense, what the divine recipe was for that as well. And we see that all in Exodus 30. So what I want to do is first of all show you where the golden altar was placed in reference to the Old Testament tabernacle. So I've moved from this page that we looked at. And again, I have the diagram of the tabernacle that you can fill in. It's on kristentschida.com. Go to it's on the top on resources, and find the devotional tab under the resources. And I have the handouts for every day, every chapter. And then there is a blank, it's kind of a little diagram you can fill in. So we had the outer court. There are all of our posts, and there's the bronze altar, the altar of sacrifice. And then behind that is the the bronze basin where the priest would wash. We kind of talked a little bit about that. And then this is the inner court. So this is all the outer court, and this is the inner court. And inside the inner court, there's so much to this. Oh my goodness, you would find the vessels, the furniture that you would find in the inner court. And I'm going to kind of point to them here. There was a table of showbread on one side. We'll talk about each of these in a little bit, in a little way through the rest of this study. And then this was the golden lampstand. And then today we're going to talk about this altar of incense that was right here. And this is the veil that separated the holy place from the most holy place, or you might hear of it as the Holy of Holies. In the Holy of Holies, the only thing we see is the Ark of the Covenant, and it's where God's presence rested between the cherubim on the top of the ark. So the most amazing thing we see here about this altar, the golden altar of incense, was to be placed right up to the veil, and the only thing that would separate the priests standing at the altar of incense, that golden altar, and God's presence was the veil. So this was as close as the priests could get to God's presence. And what they did at the altar was, and we see, they were to burn incense, this fragrant offering before the Lord day and night. So I want to look at chapter 30. We're going to look at just a couple verses, 7 and 8. And so the beginning of the chapter gives the description. This is how you are to make it. And then verse 7 and 8 says, Aaron must burn fragrant incense on the altar every morning when he tends the lamps. And the lamps were on that golden, excuse me, sorry, I'm kind of battling a congestion thing. The lampstand, those lamps that he was tending are on the golden lampstand. And he must burn incense again when he lights the lamps at twilight. So incense will burn regularly before the Lord for the generations to come. So this is not an altar where you make sacrifices. That is the bronze altar that's in the outer court. This is the altar that's it's lifting up worship, lifting up prayer, lifting up intercession. So this is what was happening when the priest would enter the the holy place. And there were, they had assignments in that holy place. And I want to just focus today on what they did at the golden altar, what does that look like for us? So the ingredients for this incense, I want to take a look at also, and then we'll just take a few minutes to unfold that. If you look toward the end of chapter 30, if you have your Bibles with you, verses 34 to 38, the Lord said to Moses, take fragrant spices, gum resin, onycha, galbanum, and pure frankincense. There you go. Yeah. All in equal amounts. Make a fragrant blend of incense, the work of a perfumer. It is to be salted and pure and sacred. Grind some of it to powder and place it in front of the ark of the covenant law in the tent of meeting, where I will meet with you. It shall be most holy to you. Do not make any incense with this formula for yourselves. Consider it holy to the Lord. So I'm going to talk about for a few minutes what it means for us to bring a fragrant offering of worship before the Lord. And then I want to just kind of pull out a few of those words that in this little sacred ingredient, that the incense was to be fragrant, pure, sacred, holy, and it's to be ground. And what are those words pointing to? So just want to share with you a little bit of what I have discovered. What I discovered on that as I was reading it. Okay, so I want to start with our just what does this fragrant offering mean for us? So the priests would go and they would burn this incense and they could smell that sweet aroma. And we know that before the Lord, God loves the aroma. He loves the aroma of intercession. He loves the aroma of our worship. He loves the aroma of just our prayers that ascend before his throne. And we looked at, I think it was yesterday when we were talking about the priests on John 12, on when Mary of Bethany came and she poured her jar of pure nard over Jesus. And I just want to take a look at that once again today. And I want to pull out some things that I see on what this fragrant worship means for us. So I'm going to read John 12, 1 through 3. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus arrived at Bethany where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. And here dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume, and she poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Sorry, I'm flipping in two different places here while I'm reading that. Okay, so what we want to see first of all is that this, for us, fragrant worship, just kind of pulling out of that. When we get to this golden altar in our lives, I think about the altar of our heart. Fragrant worship, it costs us something. It costs us something. We know when we looked at this before, and if you've studied this in any length, pure nard was one of the most expensive perfumes. It was uncommon. It was not a common fragrance, and it cost about a year's wages. And for us, when we think about that, when we approach the altar, we're not coming just flying in by the seat of our pants. We bring something that is uncommon. We bring a costly sacrifice, not something that just doesn't cost us anything. David said that I am not going to bring to the Lord something that doesn't cost me something. So what kind of sacrifice? What does that look like for you? What does that look like for me? What is a costly sacrifice? Time, energy. It could be finances. Like think about in your life, what does it cost you to meet the Lord at the golden altar of incense in your life? Second thing we see is that her fragrant worship was real. It was nothing imitation. She brought the real deal. Mary showed Jesus what she felt about him, how much she loved him. She pushed through the crowd. She didn't care about the norms in that day, and she ran and poured her love on him. She showed that Jesus' love had more of an impact on her than even anybody that was around her. So for us, we want to make sure we bring the real deal. No imitation. Third thing, that fragrant worship, it pleases God. And we see that Jesus says, and I think in Matthew, they also mentioned the same account. And what Jesus says is what she has done is a beautiful thing. Are you kidding me? I want to know, what is Jesus saying that is beautiful before him? And I want to be doing what he calls beautiful. Don't you? So when he says that this pleased him, whatever the naysayers say to us, often when we press in for this fragrant offering, when we press in this place of sacrifice, when we press in where we're spending time with the Lord instead of doing other activities, or where we're giving our lives to the Lord with great extravagance, there will be others. It's like we've raised a watermark. And so people are going to want to pull you down from that. Oh, why do you give so much time to Jesus? Oh my gosh, you spend so much time with him. And what the disciples even said to Mary was, what a waste. We could have spent that money on the poor. Really? And Jesus silences them. And he does that same thing to the voices around us that are speaking when we are going after this extravagant worship. Remember, Jesus says it's beautiful. So this is what we want to be after. The fourth thing that we see is the worship. This worship lingers. It lingers for a while. We talked about this. Mary washed his feet with her hair. What did her hair smell like? What was the fragrance that was around her? Not only in that moment where the fragrance arose. When the priests stand before the altar, it is a pleasing aroma, and it fills the entire inner court. They walk through the veil, and the smell of the incense is there. And we know that this is what we want to impact others with our fragrant worship. That where we go, we carry the fragrance of Christ. That this is what we're known for. There's something about you that just smells different, looks different, acts different. This is what we want to be known by. We're fragrant worshipers. We're extravagant worshipers. And the last thing that we see is that our fragrant worship is not released until the vessel is broken. So we need to be broken before him. And when we are broken before him, that word worship doesn't necessarily mean, oh, let's come with singing and play some music. Worship means it's that laid down life. It's bowing low. It's laying prostrate before God. And this is what our lives are broken before him. And there is something, I will tell you, when your life is hard and when there is a struggle and you press in and you say, I'm going to bring you my worship anyway. I'm going to bring my intercession. I'm going to bring something that is costly to me. Oh, what an aroma that is before the Lord. Okay, so we have this, what fragrant worship is, and I just want to take just a minute, very quickly, to walk through this divine ingredients. This just doesn't give me enough. These little short videos don't give me enough time to unpack. So, and I have done, and I think I've shared this, I've written a book called The Tabernacle, A Journey of Faith, and I'm in the middle right now of just kind of revamping that, and I'll be re-releasing that, but that would be a place, if you want to go deep with the tabernacle, that would be a study for you. It's a book and a study guide all together. It's pretty intense, but worth it if you want to study what God has to say in the tabernacle. All right, and as we know, everything points to Jesus. So even in this divine recipe of the incense, it's pointing to Jesus, and I want to just share that with you quickly in 1 minute. Okay, so we know that we laid out the spices, which of course I didn't read those accurately, the names, but here's what it said, that it was to be holy, pure, fragrant, ground, and a continually sacrifice, a continual incense. What do we know? Jesus is holy. He is holy, and he calls us to be holy. So we see holiness of who he is, holiness of who we are in that incense. Pure, Jesus was pure. He calls us to walk in purity, righteousness. So we see Jesus in us in this incense. It's fragrant. Sweet and fragrant was the ministry of Jesus. Ephesians 5:2 tells us. And he calls us to be a fragrant incense, that we would carry his presence where we go. And to one where the fragrance of life, and to the other where the stench of death. This is what incense represents. It was ground. Jesus was crushed. He was ground for us on our behalf. He took that punishment. He was ground. And the last thing is that to be continual. And Jesus lives to make intercession continually. Hebrews 7:25 tells us. And he calls us to be in that place of intercession. Be a continual sacrifice. Be continually fragrant. So he's in the incense. We're in the incense. And the greatest thing about this altar of incense, the golden altar of incense, is it was the intimacy between the priests and God. God dwelt right around the veil. So what we know, what we can take from this is intimacy is a reward. As we linger at the altar of incense, The reward that we receive is an intimate relationship with Jesus. All right, you be blessed, and I will see you tomorrow for day 31 through the 40 days of the book as we discover Exodus.